Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We're going to begin here in our designated parsha, and then what I'd like to do is take us on a little Bible tour using the word Sukkah. So we'll get a sense of this commandment to keep Sukkot in the calendar of the year, and then we're going to move to a different kind of text study. So let's begin. Someone start at 22:26.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "When an ox or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall stay 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day on it shall be acceptable as a gift to the Lord. However, no animal from the herd or from the flock shall be slaughtered on the same day with its young." All
right, so again, we understand ourselves as a covenanted people, which means that we make certain allowances for that we consider to be less than perfect. The perfect vision, of course, is a vegetarian society. That is what happened in Eden. They did not eat animals in Eden. So our vision of perfection is that we wouldn't eat living creatures, but we understand that we live in a world where we're not living in perfection, but we place limits as a covenanted people on what's allowed that's not perfect. That doesn't mean anything goes as regards eating other creatures. And here's one of the places that we see limits put on our appetite for meat, which is that the tradition understands that it's just not humane to take something from its mother right away and kill it. It's just not good practice for us, right? We just kind of wantonly take whatever we want whenever we want it. And also that the tradition understands it as just being not a good thing to kill a mother and its young on the same day. That there should just be limits placed on exactly how we deal with this issue of eating other living things. All right. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Isn't it more inhumane, if you want to separate a calf from its mother after 8 days when the mother has had a chance to get used to the calf and nurse?
Clearly they did not understand it that way. No. The answer is no for them. Okay. What do cows really feel? Honestly, I don't know. But they understood this as a good thing, as a kindness, that the mother who's just given birth has an opportunity to nurse her young. She's got milk coming. Whatever, they understood this as a kindness. We don't have to agree, but we do need to understand that they held this as a kindness.
Did they, or was that a later projection of the rabbis as to the why of this?
So the rabbis read it as a way to be aware that even though we're eating meat, we need to do so in a way that's respectful and compassionate. And for the rabbis, that's about everything we do. That there may be allowances, for things that we do, and we need to be respectful and compassionate when we do those things. This is a wonderful idea explored by Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, this whole idea of covenant being the mitigating factor between what we hold as the perfect ideal and the real world as we have it, and that covenant is about putting limits and boundaries around the imperfect world so that we can move towards perfection. And this is one of those places. Somebody read it, 29.
When you sacrifice a thanksgiving offering to Adonai, sacrifice it so that it may be acceptable in your favor. It shall be eaten on the same day. You shall not leave any of it until morning. I am Adonai.
Because most of the sacrifices had a component that the Israelites ate, right? If you sacrifice an animal, that's a lot of meat. Some of it went to feed the priests. In the case of the Holocaust, of course, it was burned up entirely on the altar, but that's the only offering that was completely burned up was the Olah, the Holocaust. Everything else there was a portion that fed the people. So if there's a lot of sacrifices going on, there's a lot of meat to eat. If you're not allowed to have any of it left over till morning, what does that mean then?
Share it with a
You
lot
have
of
to
people.
give it away.
You have to give it away. You have to share it with a lot of people, right? So your sacrifice was actually a party, right? You had a feast. If you sacrificed something, you were having a feast. You had to, if it all had to be eaten by morning, and you're sacrificing a cow, right? That's a lot of meat to share.
So when you were talking about the Holocaust,
Huh?
so do you mean that for the duration of the Holocaust?
Holocaust means
Oh.
the offering that's completely burned up on the altar.
Okay,
That's why we do not use that word to talk about what happened during the Nazi regime.
I didn't know that.
We say Shoah, the catastrophe. We don't say Holocaust because what does it imply?
That it's
It was
That it's a sacrifice that was desired.
So who came up with that word for the Shoah?
I don't know.
Yeah, my objection to the word Holocaust is that most people don't understand it and consequently don't appreciate the magnitude of his murder of millions of people. So I don't use the word either.
It's so widely used.
But we have
Yes.
a Holocaust Museum, which is Jewish.
Yeah.
The
So
word is because
we
I guess that lets Christians
accept
understand
the terminology,
what it is.
right? That's the terminology. But we generally do not use that term. We use Shoah.
In Yiddish, there's nothing like Holocaust term. It's Churban. It's
Right.
the Hebrew word for the ancient destruction of the temple.
Right. The Chorban.
Okay, the destruction of the temple is also would be considered a Holocaust?
No, it's called the Chorban. The Chorban, the catastrophe, the destruction
Oh, you're right.
means the destruction of the temple. What Sarah is pointing out is that in Yiddish, if you're referring to the Holocaust, you refer to it as the Chorban, the destruction. It is the destruction in our time. And in Hebrew, Shoah is like catastrophe.
So then why do many temples in their Hebrew school call it the Holocaust? I mean,
Because it is the accepted terminology. We get it that that's what it's called. We're not denying that that's what it's called. But I'm just explaining why we say the Shoah generally. So in Hebrew school, yes, the printed books and all of that, it's accepted that that is the term. Holocaust is the term. But we really try to raise awareness by using Shoah when we talk about it.
Thank you, because that's the first time that I've heard that.
Interestingly enough,
Although the saying Shoah makes it even more particular to the Jews. In other words, that there were 6 million of them who perished, whereas in general now the use of the H word refers to all 11 million of all religions who were wiped out.
there is...
You know, what do you say about the 5 million others, the gypsies, the Romani?
Because I think for me, I don't see Shoah as specific to the Jews.
Okay, so you
I see Shoah as being
the mass slaughter of
the mass slaughter that happened under the Nazis.
of all people.
Of all people.
of all peoples.
Right. Okay. 31.
You shall faithfully observe my commandments. I am the Lord. You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. I, the Lord, who sanctify you, I brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, Adonai.
All right.
The Adonai.
Let's go on to 23.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, These are my fixed times, the fixed times of the Lord, which you shall proclaim as sacred occasions. On 6 days work may be done, but on the 7th day there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest, a sacred occasion. You shall do no work, it shall be a Sabbath of the Lord throughout your
Go
settlement.
on.
These are the set times of the Lord, the sacred occasions which you shall celebrate each at its appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, there shall be a Passover offering to the Lord, and on the 15th day of that month, the Lord's feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days. On the first day you shall celebrate a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days you shall make gifts to the Lord. The 7th day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupation.
All right, what holiday is that? Pesach. What month of the year is it happening on?
Nisan.
The first month. Right? The first month, the 14th day of the month is Pesach, which means the year starts Nisan. At Pesach.
How about says the 15th day of the month they feast unleavened bread?
So, because it's the 15th day of the month. That's when the holiday is.
So it's like instead of Passover being January 1st, it's on January 15th.
Oh, right.
Always.
Okay.
Yes, because
14th.
it's a full moon. On the 14th day of the month is Pesach. Then the next day starts Chag HaMatzot. We've had this discussion, and we'll have it again in the spring.
Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the
Thank you, Ruben.
Hello.
So what's going on? Hello? The 14th day of the month, when you have a full moon, you're having this festival of unleavened bread, the Pesach, and then the Feast of Unleavened Bread on the 15th. So what's going on?
You've talked about the two traditions coming together.
So we have clearly two traditions. We have a tradition where the year starts in the spring, and we have a tradition where it starts in the fall. For lots of reasons, the fall one is victorious. That is what we have. But for an agricultural people, this calendar makes a lot more sense. Why?
Planting.
Because it's a harvest
Births of
time.
animals.
Planting and harvest, right?
Birth
So
of
why
animals.
this one? Why not start with the summer harvest? Why does it make sense to start it in Nisan?
This is the first.
It's new.
This is the first harvest of what?
Food.
After
the winter.
After winter. This, for an agricultural people, is the world coming back to life after the death of winter. It makes complete sense, if you think about it, that would be the beginning of the year, right? The springtime. All right, so spring harvest was your first harvest after the summer, which meant, what is Sukkot? Yes, Sukkot is fall. And what? So tell me about that. How does it change your understanding of Sukkot if the new year is Pesach? It's the completion of the agricultural year. This is the end. Sukkot, boom, we're done.
So Pesach starts it, and Sukkot is the end.
The end of the year. It is the last harvest before winter, which means it is the harvest that prevents starvation. It is the harvest that gets your clan through the dead time. So if you have a nice harvest at Sukkot, you are having a big old party.
I'm thinking of Persephone because. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
That's that part of the world.
Okay.
Right? Of course, Persephone, of course. Dead, coming back up, of course. Those myths all come from this region.
Okay.
This may not be what you want to talk about today,
But-
I have a question. You can wait for April if you want. How does what we just read on this first month we have this celebrate? What about Moses and the people and like the blood and the story of Passover? Like here, it's just like, oh, you're going to have Passover. And you're going to have this matzah celebration.
The short answer, the answer till April,
Yeah.
we'll have a longer answer. The short answer is that these agricultural festivals predate Israelite society. They are Canaanite.
So we're sort of
They are that
layering
old.
on later
So,
on.
exactly. So these festivals would have been in place long before the Israelites were having their story. And remember that most Israelites would have been converted Canaanites. Right? So you got to give them their festivals. You got to give the people their harvest festivals. You're just going to add you're going to reconstruct the reason you're doing it. Exactly right. You lay a historical layer on top of it. That's what makes early Israelite monotheism different from paganism. Paganism, you just go through the cycle of the year, every year. And you do what you need to do to try to ensure that it happens again next year. Right? You're doing all your rituals to make sure the cycle continues in a way that you want it to, like getting bounty and the right amount of rain and not rain and rain when it's supposed to and not when it's not supposed to. That's paganism. That's what this was. Once you've got Israelite interpretation of paganism, you now add a layer to the harvest that has a historical meaning. How God intervenes in history, right? Not just that God is the force that makes the rainfall and the things grow. That's a good thing. But it's a God who makes decisions about that and who intervenes in history. Salvific history. Yes?
I think we're good for April too.
Oh, all right. Excellent.
So does this predate the Exodus?
Does what predate the Exodus?
The establishment of the fall harvest.
All of these festivals would have been in place long before there was a people that had an Exodus story in the region.
So is it fair to say that Sukkot marks the end of a bountiful harvest? Or a
Hopefully
hopefully, which is why people always eat in the Sukkot?
It marks the end of the fall harvest. Whatever
harvest.
you get at the fall harvest is what's going to keep you through the winter.
Right.
100% feasting is always a part of Thanksgiving. Right? Thanksgiving involves feasting. Always. That's kind of how one of the ways that we demonstrate our gratitude is that we enjoy bounty. Right? We impose an experience of bounty. Right? That's why Yom Kippur in some ways is so powerful. We impose bounty on Rosh Hashanah. What do we eat on Rosh Hashanah?
Honey and apples.
Honey and apples. What else?
Sufganiyot.
Sufganiyot is Hanukkah, unless you ate them in your house on
I eat them all the time.
on Rosh Hashanah. What else do we eat on Rosh Hashanah?
Brisket.
What about your challah? Does it look different on Rosh Hashanah?
Complete circle.
It's round. Often it has raisins. This is not coincidental, right? That we impose bounty on ourselves at the new year to celebrate. And then what do? We turn around 10 days later and impose scarcity. So that we experience, there's such wisdom in this. Imposing bounty, imposing celebration, it's not an option. Y'all will celebrate. Period. You don't have to want to. You just have to do it. We impose bounty and then we impose scarcity, both in order to bring us to a place spiritually of awareness that's different than our regular lives. Yes? So when the pilgrims looked at how do we express Thanksgiving, what did they do? They were good religious people. What did they do? They looked at Torah. And the fall harvest came, they were going to survive the winter. They looked at their Bible for what they're supposed to do to celebrate that. And they look at Sukkot. That Thanksgiving is Sukkot, literally. Thanksgiving was by the people who came here, and they looked in the Bible and saw, of course, after the fall harvest, you feast and you celebrate. All right. This year, of course, though, it's going to be Hanukkah, which is just so wrong. The first candle is before Thanksgiving. It's just so wrong.
What do you mean the first candle?
Shift here, right? It's so exciting.
It's
what an opportunity.
so exciting.
So we are alive for the one time in the modern era that this is going to happen.
It's so exciting.
When's the last time that happened?
About 100.
Somebody sent me an email that had when it happened, but it's not going to happen again for like 4,000 years. Like it's not going to happen in our.
We're not going to
have to worry about it. Exactly.
Well, I heard this morning the world's ending in 1.75 billion years. The Earth is ending.
Well, maybe.
Right? Latkes on Thanksgiving. All right.
1.75 billion years.
Let's look at 9, verse 9.
I'm sorry,
the
you
Lord-
lost me somewhere. Is that mean you're talking about Hanukkah this year is early? Is that what it is?
Yes,
Yeah.
on the same day
okay,
as
because I got
Thanksgiving.
The first candle is before Thanksgiving.
Did you go away for a few minutes?
The same day as Thanksgiving.
All right, verse 9.
The
Good.
Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people, and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving you, and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. He shall elevate the sheaf before the Lord for acceptance in your behalf. The priest shall elevate it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day that you elevate the sheaf, you shall offer as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb of the first year without blemish. The grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of a measure of choice flour with oil mixed in, a gift of pleasing odor to the Lord. And the libation with it shall be of wine, 1/4 of a hin. Until that very day, until you have brought the offering of your God, you shall eat no bread or parched grain or fresh ears. It is a law for all time throughout the ages in all your settlements.
All right, this is Chag HaMatzot. This is the second day of this 7-day business. You're going to elevate the sheaf, and it talks about the sacrifice that you're going to bring. So this is still, of course, Pesach. 15. Somebody read.
And from the day.
I'm getting stereo here.
And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to Adonai. You shall bring from your settlements 2 loaves of bread to an elevation offering. Each shall be made of 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, baked after leavening, as first fruits to Adonai. With the bread you shall present a burnt offering as burnt offerings to Adonai. 7 yearling lambs without blemish, 1 bull of the herd, and 2 rams with their meal offerings and libations, an offering by fire of pleasing odor to Adonai. You shall also offer 1 he-goat as a purgation offering, and 2 yearling lambs as a sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall elevate these, the 2 lambs, together with the bread of first fruits as an elevation offering before Adonai. They shall be holy to Adonai, or the priest. On that same day you shall hold a celebration. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall not work at your occupations. This is a law for all times in all your settlements throughout the ages.
All right, what holiday is this?
Shavuot.
Shavuot.
And this is all in the plural. Is it not? So each Israelite didn't bring all the stuff. This was the whole community.
The community, correct. So this is the communal offering on Shavuot. Shavuot has nothing of its own. Shavuot is completely dependent on being 7 full sets of 7 days after the elevation offering of the sheaf. That's all, right?
Pesach.
So after that part of Pesach where you lift the sheaf, you count 7 sets of 7 days, and then you get this other business, right? So it's Shavuot, the festival of weeks, because that's the only way you know when it is to count 7 weeks that are made of 7 days.
Plural of Sheva.
Correct. Shavua is a week from Sheva. Correct.
So where did the idea come from that this was the giving of the Torah and that you study all of that?
So there's a historical layer given to every holiday except this one in Torah. Right? Torah has other things that go along. Sukkot, we're going to get to, has its historical memory. So does Pesach in Torah. But this is the only one that doesn't in Torah. So the rabbis, they have to, particularly once you no longer have the temple and you no longer have this as an agricultural festival, when you bring sacrifices, now what are you going to do on Shavuot? There's nothing to do anymore, right? All this is gone. Once biblical Israel's gone, you have no way to observe it. So the rabbis have to give it a historical layer so that there's something to commemorate, right? Something that it observes. And they do a fantastic job of fetching the counting so that they get to, of course, this was Sinai. It's unbelievable. Like, I studied it once and just kind of went, what? But if Moshe was here on that, and then that means if you count back from there. And they do this fetch that you would not believe to come up with, it was Shavuot that they were at Sinai.
So I'm confused. I thought there was a part of Shavuot where you have to eat dairy.
Yeah.
No, that is a custom.
It's a custom.
It is a custom to eat dairy on Shavuot.
Okay, and where did that custom come from?
It's Eastern Europe.
Very lobby.
It's
what?
Very lobby, I said.
Eastern Europe.
It came from a people that doesn't tolerate dairy very well either, ironically. There's lots of different explanations about why it got started. One that I've heard is that if it's Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of the Torah, and the Israelites were preparing for 3 days to receive Torah, they would not have been slaughtering animals during that time, so there was no meat. They would only have eaten dairy on that day because they've been preparing to receive Torah. They're not killing animals. So,
and they like blintzes.
And they love blintzes. And so...
Yes, where did they find the blueberries?
Yeah, right.
I'm very ignorant of Hebrew. I don't know how to read it. But would the word Shiva have anything to do when people say they said Shiva for 7 already? Is it something related?
Shiva is 7.
So that's what I'm saying. Is there...
Similar root.
I'm talking is the same root.
It's the same word.
It's the same word.
Shavua is 7 days. Shavua is a week. Sheva is 7. You sit Shiva.
Okay. I'm just asking.
That's the word. It's not just related. That's what it means. So basically you're saying we sit 7.
Okay.
That's what Shiva is. Exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 22.
And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I, Adonai, am your God.
This is the summer harvest of Shavuot, and it's very clear that you are to allow the poor to participate in the harvest by leaving what for them to harvest. You don't give part of what you've harvested to the poor. Instead, the poor come and harvest as well because it doesn't all belong to you. None of it actually belongs to you. It all belongs to God.
And you do not cut food stamps.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
That's why I love this.
Right? That's exactly right.
And this is in the middle. It's interesting. This is kind of like a moral thing in the middle of all of this ritual.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
More to it, I find, that the fact that you leave it there, that people are not humiliated by begging. They pick it up. And I think it's very important when people keep their own dignity.
That's exactly right. They participate in the harvest. Everyone goes to harvest, so do the poor.
Yeah.
They have land to harvest because it all belongs to God.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a wonderful.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And you're absolutely right, Sarah. We could interpret this. We can translate this. Verse 22, do not cut food stamps. 100%. I'm so angry. I'm so angry about it.
Is there anything we can do? Because I'm really...
It's just so horrifying
You
to
know
me.
what's interesting? I am pissed off about it too, but just so happens last weekend I was in a bonds I'm not usually in, and I watched a manager shoo away a guy because he routinely uses his food stamps. He comes and he buys food, and about 20 minutes later he returns the food to the other side of the store where he didn't buy it, and he gets cash from it and goes and buys alcohol. So there's definitely a part that needs to be cleaned up of that program.
But this does not say the poor who don't do bad things.
It's exactly right.
Right. Well, of course,
That's
one
exactly
desperate. No, I'm pissed. They're
exactly right. There's abuse in every system.
I know. I just happen to have.
Yeah, I mean, could the poor come harvest this and then go sell it and buy alcohol with what they? Of course, but the point is, you make food available to people who are food insecure. Period. It's just clear. It could not be clearer. All right, 23.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus. In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. You shall not work at your occupations, and you shall bring a gift to the Lord.
Okay, that is all that is said about
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah. Because it's not Rosh Hashanah. It's the 7th month, right? On the first day of the month, in the 7th month of the year, you will have a sacred occasion, you will not work, and you'll have loud blasts. Zehu, that's it. That's all we get.
Actually, it's very close to July 4th, if you look at it in terms of
there you go.
Regular, right? Because the first day of the 7th month in our calendar would be July 1st.
4th of July. All right, there it is.
Fireworks, so.
There it is. Fireworks, barbecue.
Another feast.
All right. So that's it.
No.
That's all we know.
I'm just kidding. I'm talking about the secular calendar.
All right, 26.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Mark, the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall practice self-denial, and you shall bring a gift to the Lord. You shall do no work throughout that day, for it is a day of atonement on which expiation is made on your behalf before the Lord your God. Indeed, any person who does not practice self-denial throughout that day shall be cut off from his kin. And whoever does any work throughout that day, I will cause that person to perish from among his people. Do no work whatever. It is a law for all time, throughout the ages, in all your settlements. It shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. On the 9th day of the month, at evening, from evening to evening, you shall observe this your Sabbath.
All right, we're in the 7th month, so we're coming to the end of the agricultural cycle. You blow a ram's horn on the first day of that month. Then, on the 10th day of the month, you have this Day of Atonement. You're going to practice self-denial. We'll talk about that.
Are we in the 7th month now?
Mm-hmm. Yes. According to this calendar, yes.
Okay.
We're in the 7th month of the year, coming to the end of the agricultural cycle. We get this day of self-denial, that we're going to have atonement made for us. And then the last holiday of the cycle.
What is the gift that's brought to the Lord?
On
the Day of Atonement.
So do you mean the offering?
Yeah, it says you're going to practice self-denial, and you shall bring a gift to the Lord.
It doesn't say here.
It's a plural yield. It's the community.
Right. It doesn't spell it out here.
Oh, right. It's not spelled out.
Right.
But is there a modern, a contemporary
No.
thing that mirrors that?
No.
Okay.
No, not in any of them. Right? That got left with the agricultural business and with the destruction of the temple. I shouldn't say that. What mirrors it is prayer. Wherever there was an offering, we now have a service.
Okay.
We now have a prayer service.
Okay.
So the holiday service takes the place of the offering.
Okay, but when you build the Sukkot, you are mirroring an agricultural festival.
Correct.
Right. So, but that's just for folkways reasons, as opposed to religious reasons.
It says so. It's coming up.
No, we're told we have to make them.
Okay.
But so yes, that part stayed. Anything though that had to do with offerings gets translated as prayer.
Okay.
Right. Any holiday where there was offerings.
Yeah, anything that sort of in a way rises up to God.
There's a prayer service now.
So it used to be smoke, now it's prayer.
Now it's prayer. Now it's the words of prayer. Exactly right.
So, Rabbi, what is the first month on this?
Nisan? Pesach.
Yeah, I know, but
it's the first month.
Here it's the 7th month, so.
Right, because that starts at Rosh Hashanah.
I know, I'm confused.
All right, so the reason you're confused is good, because what we want to do is make sure we're shaking up our comfort with this calendar. We're so used to Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the new year. We're so used to that we forget there's a whole nother system operating at the same time, right? It takes a long time for it to sort out to become this calendar. So it's what I'm saying is it's good that you're confused, because what it means is you're going, wait, what? Right? That's good. That's the point, is we want to shake up What? Right? Because it's completely different. This is completely different from how we celebrate our Jewish calendar now. It's very different. But the reason I want us to try to internalize this a little bit is because to me, this makes more sense, and it completely revalues Sukkot, which is, of course, where we're going. Right? Which is why I've dragged us through the other part of this, is so that you understand, if we started at Pesach, we're now at the end of the year, we get this loud ram horn day, then we get this Day of Atonement, and we're coming to the end of the year, and what do we get? 33? Reuben, read it.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, say to the Israelite people, on the 15th day of this 7th month,
where we've already had 2 holidays,
there shall be the Feast of Booths to Adonai to last 7 days. The first day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days you shall bring offerings by fire to Adonai. On the 8th day you shall observe a sacred occasion and bring an offering by fire to Adonai. It is a solemn gathering. You shall not work at your occupation.
All right, this is all we're told in Leviticus about this Feast of Booths. Right? That's what we're told. So this ends the agricultural year and the liturgical year. Right? This ends the celebrations for the year. In the Second Temple period, by the Second Temple, Sukkot has become the main festival of the Jewish people. It is the main festival. You are closing the year. You've had this Day of Atonement. So presumably the Day of Atonement gets you ready for this party, which makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it? Then we start the year, and 10 days later have this very serious atoning, forgiving, blah, 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 blah. It makes very little sense. It makes a lot more sense that on the biggest party of the year, you're going to kick off that month with right? It's here. The 7th month is here. Then you're going to clean up all your business, and then you're going to have the party to end all parties before the dead time of the winter. Makes a lot of sense.
When did the tradition, I guess I'm sure that's the right word, of starting reading the Torah from Genesis at Rosh Hashanah? Because there's also the Torah cycle where we start again, since that Torah, and we, like I think of it like the year of the Torah, goes with Rosh Hashanah, not with Nisan.
Right, it goes with Sukkot.
With Sukkot. So when did that tradition start? When did we decide, or maybe we don't know, but I'm just wondering how that linked in that we decided to put it there.
I don't know. It
has to be rabbinic.
It is rabbinic because it's after the destruction, right? Because it's Ezra who comes back saying, okay, the people don't know anything. They don't know anything. And that's when a public reading of Torah begins Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat.
And that rabbinic period is what time?
Well,
so
that's pre-rabbinic.
They're kind of formulating of that stuff, and then there's the codification of it, right? So the Mishnah is everything after 70, right? After the destruction. The destruction happens in 70 of the Common Era, and then there's lots of talking and dreaming and writing about it because it's gone. The only way to engage with it is to talk about it. So the Mishnah are all of the rulings about, okay, well, in the temple they did this. Well, when exactly does it mean they did that? Well, there had to be 3 stars because we know that. Right? So all of that is a way of fantasizing about the temple that's gone. So the Mishnah is 70 through about 200 of the Common Era. Then already 200 years, into the Common Era, there's already arguments about the Mishnah because we're Jews, right? So God forbid you should just publish it and you're done, right? You publish it, you get it codified, the Mishnah codified, and now there's arguing. about, well, when it says 3 stars, it doesn't mean those stars, it means another star, and it has to be this and it's exactly, if it's cloudy and you can't see the star, right? So then you've got all these arguments, and those arguments together with the Mishnah is the Talmud. The hunk of Mishnah they're talking about, and all the arguing about that Mishnah, together that makes the Talmud.
So it's kind of like a movement from Judaism being very based on an agricultural society to then you have Jews living in cities studying Torah. And so they kind of get disconnected.
Correct. So the Mishnah and the Talmud become one way of observing this stuff once this stuff is gone. The other is to engage with the scripture about it, right? And so the cycle of reading Torah. There was a triennial cycle. We think probably, it's very old that there was a triennial cycle. You read the Torah in 3 years. Then in the medieval period, it becomes normative to read it annually.
Oh, so it's way after.
So it's late. So I don't know exactly when, but there was a triennial reading that was normative.
Over 1,000 years.
So we progressive Jews who read on a triennial cycle are actually returning.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Shmini
No.
Atzeret fits in here somewhere. Because you're not supposed to. Oh, that's the 8th day.
What did you ask me? Shmini Atzeret is the 8th day of Sukkot. So
When
it's
you're not supposed to work.
the day of tarrying. Exactly.
It's the hangover day.
It's the hangover day. That's exactly what it is. All right, let's finish this Sukkot business. Jackie, now that you brought it up, read it 37.
Okay. Those are the set times of Adonai that you shall celebrate as sacred occasions, bringing offerings by fire to Adonai, burnt offerings, meal offerings, sacrifices, and libations on each day what is proper to it, apart from the Sabbaths of Adonai and apart from your gifts, and from all your votive offerings and from all your free will offerings that you give to Adonai.
Go on.
Mark on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the yield of your land, you shall observe the festival of Adonai to last 7 days.
7 days. Sukkot is 7 days. Yes? Okay, go on.
A complete rest on the first day, and a complete rest on the 8th day. On the first day you shall take the product of hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. You shall rejoice before your God Adonai 7 days. And you shall observe it as a festival of Adonai for 7 days in the year. You shall observe it in the 7th month as a law for all time throughout the ages. You shall live in the booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in the booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I, your God, Adonai.
So Moses declared to the Israelites the set times of Adonai. All right. So 7 days is Sukkot. We get somewhere else that there's to be a day, another day, the day of tarrying, right? And the rabbis interpret it as God is so happy that the Israelites are hanging out with God in the Sukkah, right out of their homes, back in the Sukkah, just like when they followed God in the desert. God is so happy that God is reluctant to let the people go back to their normal lives and asks for one more day. Stay with me one more day, the day of tarrying. Shmini, 8, the 8th day of Atzeret, of hanging out, of waiting, of tarrying. It's a beautiful interpretation of Shmini Atzeret. And Shmini Atzeret, Linda, Shmini Atzeret is followed by Simchat Torah, right? The day of the rejoicing with the Torah, except in Reconstructionist practice, Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah are the same day.
Oh, how do you say Shmini? I didn't know about that.
Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of tarrying. All right, so what are we told about this festival? It's a harvest, right? You're going to bring in your harvest, and then you're going to take the product of hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. 4 species that you're going to take. So the rabbis, of course, have to look at this and say, what exactly is the commandment? So you take them. Once you hold them, you have fulfilled the commandment. Once they're in your hand, you're done. That's the commandment, is to take them together. Why?
Because it says so.
Because it says so. We are not given any kind of an explanation about why. There's lots of theories, of course, about where this originates, what this is about. And then, so we're to take this bouquet, and we're supposed to live in Sukkot. Because, why?
In order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt.
All right, so I made them hoshavti. I caused them. This is the causative form of the verb to dwell. I caused them to dwell in Sukkot, behotzi'i otam, when in my taking them out, me'eretz Mitzrayim, of the land of Egypt. What are the Sukkot being referred to here?
The life in the desert.
The life in the desert. Wouldn't they have been in tents?
You have a nomadic life.
I don't know.
They had to be fragile.
If you say so.
Hastily built.
They had to be fragile.
They had to be fragile. How do we know that?
Well, living in the desert is fragile. And traveling.
Sukkot, though, what are these Sukkot? I made them live in Sukkot.
Because you're exposed. You're exposed to the element. You're naked.
Go look at a tribe of Bedouins that live in the desert.
Maybe these are
They
stronger.
live in tents.
They live in tents.
So what's a booth?
So what's a booth? It's a very good question, Laura Diamond.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's something to appreciate that you're not in a tent, but you have trees and brooks.
All right. So something is going on with trees, right?
Yeah.
And you're not in a tent. You're in a booth. You're in a sukkah. So either the sukkah is something specific that they had only when they were doing the schlep from Egypt that is different than what nomadic people have in the desert other times, or this is not referring to their dwellings. There is an interpretation that says these Sukkot are the clouds of glory with which God protected the people in the desert.
The rabbis must have had a great time with this.
They had a blast with this. Are you kidding me? There's gorgeous stuff written about the Sukkot are the clouds, the ananei hakavod that God used to protect the people in the desert. They lived in their tents the way every nomadic people lives in their tents. Their tent was not their shelter, right? Their shelter was the sukkah that God provided for them. God's ananei hakavod that protected them. They weren't safe in their tents. They were in the middle of the desert. They were vulnerable. But what made them safe was God's sukkah.
Is this where the lulav and the etrog?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so where's
Where
the
did the etrog
So where's the etrog?
The fruit of the hadar tree has been interpreted to be the citron,
Citrus?
the etrog, the citron.
What's your language?
But we're not really sure what hadar trees
The
are.
citron.
Are we really sure what hadar trees were?
No. They were beautiful. Hod v'hadar, because hadar means beauty.
Could part of this be also presumably at some point during the 40 years in the schlepping around in the desert, they would have encountered an oasis here and there, and so could the beautiful trees be sort of be hearkening back to a memory of even in the desert there are places.
Lovely. So where other than the desert do you really appreciate a source that allows for all of this agricultural stuff, right? The place you really appreciate that there's enough water for a willow tree or a hadar tree is in the desert. So clearly there's some association here with rain or underground sources of water, which are also fed by rain, and there being enough water, and something about a memory of living in the desert where you're completely dependent on shade. The sukkah, you're dependent on shade to survive. On some level, you need, relief and enough water for there to be shade. Clearly, there's a connection. The rabbis remember from the time of the temple that the festival was the time that God decided how much rain would fall for the coming year. There's the new year on which it is decided what happens to us. That's Yom Kippur. The world is judged for rain on Sukkot. It was reflected in our liturgy. After Sukkot, we change to Geshem in the Amidah. Not God who brings the tal, the dew, but the Geshem. Because this is the rainy season, right? Right after Sukkot is your rainy season in Israel. And if it rains well and the way it's supposed to in the winter, you eat in the spring. Yes? If it doesn't go well, there is no spring harvest. There's drought and there's famine. So this was the time of praying for rain, that it should happen the way it's supposed to. If it rains when it's not supposed to, what happens in Israel? If you get a huge rain when it's not supposed to rain, flash flooding is what happens, that wipes away all your agriculture. It tears up the soil, right? And flash floods that take in Israel, you got to listen to your radio when it's getting cloudy and you're in the desert, because you could die. The flash floods are so violent, it takes your car and you're gone. So people are killed all the time in these flash floods because they don't know.
Down in the next.
Yes, 100%. So they're dangerous. Rain out of its season is dangerous. Not enough rain in its season is dangerous. It's all dependent on rain in Israel. So clearly something about these species, right? It's got to have to do with water. Sukkot, some people think it's from when you harvested. You're out in the field all day long. You don't go home, because often you went to the field to work, and it was often a schlep. It was far away. So where did you sleep?
Under the stars.
In the field.
In the field, and in the daytime, you needed relief from the sun, and so you were in a sukkah. You took your breaks, and you took your naps, and you took your shluff in the afternoon, your siesta, in the sukkah.
There was a great love story that occurred at this time of the year with Boaz and no?
When did that happen?
Well, it would be at this
Harvest.
time.
It would have been the barley harvest, which is Shavuot, and yes, there was a very racy
That's
scene
in the spring.
where she uncovers his legs. Just saying. She goes to the threshing floor and uncovers his legs. Shavuot. So we read the book of Ruth at Shavuot.
What did you just say,
I just see it as a great love story.
Naomi sends Ruth to the threshing floor to uncover Boaz's legs.
Yes, right.
But they had to sleep out there because they couldn't. This is what I'm talking about. Tying it all together.
Exactly right.
But he
right.
was very generous.
He was very generous. He covered her with his cloak.
I think it's so beautiful in our Hashkiveinu prayer. I like the interpretation of Sukkah, not booth, but shelter. The Sukkot, Shlomecha, shelter of your peace, is just such beautiful language in the Hashkiveinu.
Mm-hmm.
And I
seems like shelter of your
don't you see the stars through the kind of
the rabbi's rule for a sukkah to be kosher, you have to be able to see take a packet and pass it, take just the whole thing and pass it, the whole thing.
In the middle of the Sinai, there's a Santa Catarina, The monastery.
Yeah.
Now the monks grow crops that's not nearby.
Take the whole thing. 3 sheets.
Take the whole thing.
3 sheets and just pass it.
So here's your.
Everyone should have 3 sheets.
Here's your 3 sheets.
Amy, what does the word sukkah mean?
Ha ha ha! Funny you should ask, Jackie. Did you just ask what does sukkah mean?
Yeah.
Funny you should ask. Pam needs.
I think I gave you a cue.
I think that you are going to get $1.
I was thinking about Jonah and
right?
The shade.
There's some more.
Yeah, so
All right. Jackie Israel just asked the $5 million question. What does sukkah mean? Since we keep saying, well, it could mean this, it could mean that, how do you know? One of the ways that you know what something means is to use what's called a concordance. And a concordance is where you look in this big fat book, Sukkah, and it will tell you every place in the Torah that Sukkah is mentioned. Then you compare all of those to each other to try to get a well-rounded picture of what this might be talking about. So that's what we're going to do.
Is there any more?
There's not any more.
Okay.
More of you came than I anticipated. It is a wonderful problem to have. I can make some more when we leave. So this is available online. This is from a much larger packet of materials put together by what was then called the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, which is now not called that. All right. So look where it says text sheet with discussion questions. Yes? So let's look at these occurrences of Sukkah in other places in the Bible. Somebody start with Jonah.
Oh, I like Jonah.
Okay, then read that.
Then Jonah left the city and sat on the east side of the city. He made a sukkah there and sat under it in the shade until he might see what happened to the city.
All right, what do you think Sukkah means here then?
A shelter.
Some kind of shelter. What does it suggest that? Tell me about this shelter. What does it suggest?
It's up high, and you can see the city from there.
Okay.
So it's an outpost.
Okay, it's an outpost. It provided shade. So clearly there's some kind of roof on it because it provides shade.
That's all that's implied.
That's all that's implied. Tell me what else is implied. For me, something else is implied.
Temporary.
Temporary. That it's something you just throw up. This is not, and Jonah spent 3 years building a sukkah, right? He's waiting for something to happen, and in the meantime, he puts together a sukkah and sits in its shade waiting to see what he's going to see.
It's like a lean-to.
It's like a lean-to.
But it doesn't have to have any walls.
It doesn't say anything about what it is. All we know is that it's got some kind of roof because it provides shade.
Right. It's like those sort of more modern shade things for pools where it's just the little
So possibly
top.
it's just the little top. We don't know.
But
Because otherwise it would say
But he made a sukkah there. It was fast. It suggested it's fast. It suggested it's temporary.
And he could do it on his own.
He could do it on his own. He didn't need help. And it provides shade. That's what we know from Jonah. All right. And if you look up the shoresh, samech kaf hey, this 3-letter root, the actual meaning of it is to look, to observe. Okay, so Sarah suggests that sukkah coming from observe means something about the place of the sukkah, that it is a lookout place, that is a part of the definition, or it derives from having been a lookout point. That makes a lot of sense. If this verb means to see or to observe, it would make sense. It's something you put up there, right? That it's a place from which you can see.
It's where God looks out for us.
And it's lovely. Pam's always going to go to these lovely rabbinic-like interpretations.
What about
She's got that rabbi's mind.
What about a place with a view? It's sort of like a view of the city.
Right, that's what Sarah's saying. Exactly. That you can see.
That?
Yeah, there's a lookout point that you can see from
right,
there.
But I don't know. I go to a place that it means it's a view of beauty.
Ah. Why?
Because it's a lookout place. It's high.
He's going to see what's going to happen in the city.
He wants the city destroyed at this point.
Destruction.
Right? He's going to go wait under the sukkah to see what happens in the city. Whether it's a beautiful view, I don't know, but it's a view of the city.
Okay. But you said something, 3 years? He stayed there?
Huh?
You're making a joke.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, I said it doesn't say it took him 3 years to build this thing, right? He just, boom, it says he put it together. All right.
I like how
she was making a joke.
I like how you can see the heavens through the
schach.
Yeah.
So that's rabbinic, right? The rabbis put that as a condition of the sukkah.
But that means it can't provide perfect shade.
It provides some kind of shade. It's not the best shade you could get. All right. What do we see in Isaiah? Somebody read the text from Isaiah chapter 4.
Indeed, over all the glory shall hang a canopy, chuppah, which shall serve as a sukkah for shade from the heat by day and as shelter for protection against drenching rain.
Is this where the tradition of the chuppah originated, or no? Does it have anything to do with Sukkot? Sorry.
Does chuppah have anything to do with Sukkot? I don't know.
At the
There's no, I've never heard a connection, but I'm not going to say that the impulse for chuppah is completely unrelated to a people who has an attachment to the idea of a sukkah. The chuppah is a symbol of the home that the couple's going to make together.
He's not talking about a sukkah. He's talking about a chuppah, which could serve as a sukkah.
Mm-hmm. So, over all the glory, over the kavod, chuppah. There will be a chuppah. The sukkah tihiyeh. And there will be a sukkah. Is the sukkah the chuppah?
Well, in the English it is.
In the English it is. So when I was reading this last night, I was like, it doesn't actually say that the sukkah is the chuppah. Right? But certainly one could read it that way. And if that's the case, then what is this sukkah?
The sukkah you need to see the sky, and so
that's rabbinic. That's rabbinic. We keep going there, but that's rabbinic. That's not biblical.
This one's complete, and it's the sukkah is a function that something serves. It's not the thing itself.
Here they're talking about protection from rain.
So in this case, the sukkah is possibly a chuppah, and it provides shade during the day and protection against drenching rain. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what we know. Protection against drenching rain. If you go out in our sukkah, you ain't going to get protection from drenching rain. So this suggests something, Dafka, that you don't see through the top. It's more like a chuppah that is going to protect you by giving you shade, and is going to protect from rain, meaning it's solid.
It's starting to sound like a tent.
Starting to sound like a tent.
It's sort of, both of them are sort of temporary.
If it's that's right. If it's temporary, because it was made out of leaves and whatever, so I don't think it's very protective.
Yes, David?
But the Sukkot is a solid structure, so it kind of also symbolizes the transfer between living nomadic lifestyle to a more urban lifestyle.
Very nice. Sukkah as transition.
From nomadic to urban.
And
these first two passages, I noticed that the Sukkot serves kind of as a spiritual vessel to wherever the Jews might be. They have this divine protection. And this waiting outside the city is kind of connected to the same things as the rain and the drenching, because it's kind of serving as a protection and as a viewing post to see the changing things. Or, urban lifestyle is always ever changing, wars or whatever. Nature is also changing. But whatever happens inside the Sukkot always stays the same. The Jews will always remain Jews.
You and Pam can go have lunch, right? Because so the rabbinic mind, right? Which is why I wanted to bring the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory, right, to mind. Because for the rabbis, that's the point. The only protection we have is God. That God is our sukkah. God provides our sukkah.
Everything else changes.
Everything else changes. 100%. And the sukkah represents an understanding that really we're dependent on that protection. We leave our houses in the city and go outside, right? Because we think that's what's unchanging. Our life. We're safe, right? That's where nothing changes. But as David points out, everything changes. What doesn't change is the sukkah that we revisit, right? That we are divinely held always.
It's kind of because if you think about it, Jonah needed protection of God in order, and feeling that he has a protection in order to and observe the city. He needed the sukkah. He needed the God's protection. Because he was called by God to go to the city and bring the words. Mm-hmm. So that's what it makes so much sense, the whole thing.
Good.
The sukkah itself.
Excellent.
Does anyone ever make the leap that this feeling of protection in the ever-changing whatever, and looking at the outside and what's going on, and the connection of the food, and you're bracing yourself for winter, and there's this bounty of food that's there for you to get through your winter as part of your protection from winter. So it's protection on two levels. Does anyone ever kind of make the connection and link? No?
I think that's absolutely true. That this is the protection against starvation. This is the protection against winter. Is this harvest? 100%. I think it's prophylactic.
And the actual structure is protecting you.
So that's the paradox of Sukkah that I want us to hold. The Sukkah is less protective than your house. It gives you less protection than your house. That's why we go out there. To remember we are fragile. We think we're safe in our house, but ask my neighbor about how safe he is with his cancer. He's dying in his house. We are not safe ever. So we go out in the sukkah to remind ourselves the only real safety, the only real protection is God. We're always safe within that. And the sukkah provided shade so you didn't die of heat stroke, right? So it is this paradox of the sukkah both being protective and dafka, the opposite of protection. It's a wonderful thing. And so I think we oversimplify the sukkah, which is why I wanted us to look at these texts. I think we oversimplify, and it's become pediatrified. You know what I mean? And simplistic. And it's very symbolic, and it's very profound for the rabbis, this idea of sukkah. And the lulav and etrog, they go to being the spine of the human being is the lulav. The etrog is the heart of the human being. The willow is the lips. And the myrtle are the eyes. And so for them, it's cosmic, right? It's both cosmic and really small. That's the beauty. That's the fragility. And the blessing is ourselves. That each of us is fragile. We're so fragile and glorious at the same time. That is the meaning of Sukkot, right? Is the both, and the physical, and the kind of the physical being strong and holy and sacred and amazing, and the physical being really fragile.
I just want to say, it's almost to me like this is a commandment to seek out fragility and vulnerability.
Yes.
Because you could have the most expensive house and the fanciest car and all the degrees, but really strength is in being able to be vulnerable and fragile. And so many people forget that, and they try to build these big safety places that are fake, right? So
That's why we build big houses.
right.
That's why we build big houses. Because we want to think we're safe.
Right.
And if I have a great big old house, that means I am powerful.
Right. But you're not, because you can still get cancer.
You may have lunch with the two of them. You'll fight about who picks up the check.
Well, I'm happy to, because I wouldn't have thought of it if they hadn't said it.
So that's precisely the point of Sukkot. Get out of your houses, you Israelites, where you think you're safe. Because you're never safe. And if you're in the Sukkah and vulnerable, you understand that even with terminal cancer, you're safe. Only if...
It doesn't matter how we one experience life. That's what God is for me. It's my way of experiencing my life. If I have God with me, and somehow I have that serenity or acceptance and being able to be vulnerable and feel okay with it.
No matter what happens, you're safe. Yes? Blanche?
We lived in the desert for 9 years. We lived in Phoenix. And I taught school. And I taught a unit on Indians. What the Indians did for themselves is leave Phoenix in the summer. They would go up to Prescott and other places where they were in the shade.
Where they were cooler.
Where they were cooler. And I learned a lot from them, because when you look at people all over the world, you can get an appreciation of everyone's attitudes.
Right. Right. And why did they leave in the summer? Because being exposed and out in that heat was dangerous.
Yes.
That is the way that the Sukkah represents safety. And shelter is so you don't swelter.
Even though you're not really safe.
We'll close looking at Psalms 31. Somebody read it.
Second page. You grant them the protection of your presence against scheming men. You shelter them in your sukkah from contentious tongues.
So back to this idea that God has a sukkah, right? That we are sheltered and protected by God's sukkah, which in the Hashkivenu prayer, as Pam mentioned, in our liturgy at night, is we ask that God, ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha, spread over us the sukkah of your shalom, of your well-being, of your wholeness over us. So this Sukkot, may each of us move into this festival of celebration with an awareness of our bounty, with an awareness of all that we have to be grateful for, and may we have the strength and the trust to be vulnerable so that we might be truly, truly blessed.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.